Okay, good evening to all of you. Before I start, myself Prabhat, can you hear all of? Can you hear us? Just raise your hand to tell. Oh, thanks, Anubhav. Thanks. Yeah. Uh, Although you have very less participant, but let's start at the time so that you can finish at the time. Uh, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the Virtual Knowledge Network, Niemann's Echo. Few of the faces are familiar. Few of the faces are familiar. I can recognize them. This is a new session we started. We titled it "Road to Recovery." It's
Hello,
uh,
is it audible?
yes, but yeah, keep all the mics mute when one side is speaking. Okay, otherwise it goes noise. It will be very noisy. Okay, the objective of Virtual Knowledge Network NEMANS, it's a collaboration between Project ECHO, UNM School of Medicine, US. The major objective is that reduce the variation in standard of care across country, sharing the best practice models, and the most important part is that sharing the wisdom, the clinical wisdom, all of us practice along with clinical practice guideline. And it's aimed to be not a single session; it's a hand holding and developing a learning loop. Uh, Okay, now this is example of how it works. Now how it works is there is a multidisciplinary team. You can see all of us sitting here. I will towards the end I will introduce our team members. But at the same time, it goes to all the other centers. This is just a pictorial. The learning happens bidirectional and parallelly. So all of us learn from each other and also from our peers and colleagues. So it's a peer-based learning rather than a training a class. Now, the objective of this starting this echo, there is no title, Road to Recovery, we have realized that, I mean, all of us agree in this point, there is a significant mental health gap in the area of rehabilitation and reintegration in severe psychiatric disorders. And obviously, rehabilitation differs according to clientele and available resources. And we need to learn from best practices which are relevant to our country. This is a pilot, so we have three sessions at this thing. Each month, fourth Friday, we start at 2 o'clock, and the first session is today's session. Okay, this is the first schedule where the team will speak about what happens at our center, and the second session, the next month Friday, fourth Friday, it is Challamattu Trust Madurai will speak. Then last one by the Mysore group, and once you get a feedback from you all will decide whether to take it further and is it feasible, acceptable, and probably effective in taking it further. And now the format of today's most of the general format is there will be a clinical case where today we will speak about the rehabilitation assessment in practice, challenges and opportunities, interactive discussions, tentative follow-up, followed by a didactic and expert about this field. I think today's case will be presented by Dr. Chetan. Dr. Chetan, he is my colleague sitting here, and didactic by Dr. Sivakumar. Now, this is very important. As it's online live synchronous program, you need to be very careful. Please use your name as your login ID, name or center. Now, keep the mic mute. The mute mic is in the left corner of your screen. There is a speaker symbol. There is a mute mic. Keep it mute when sessions are progress, because all sessions are getting recorded, and it basically we thought recording will help you later to go back and have a look at that. Now there are two ways to ask question. One, there is a raise hand button. It's looks like a symbol of political party. Just click it. It indicates to us that you want to ask a question. But obviously, chat is active at any point of time. We can chat to which ID we can. Yeah, you can chat to two IDs. One is VLE as well as my name Prabhat Chand. That is a login. You can chat to both things. You can see here, or you can chat to all of them. But you can see the questions. Now we'll encourage you once session is over. Print is over. Please unmute yourself and ask questions. More than questions, I want suggestions and how to take it further. And group logins. So it's not for this session actually. Yeah, chat is active. I think I stop here. I told today didactic. We started didactic.
Yeah, we started.
So sorry, we started didactic today. Welfare benefits of person with psychiatric disability by Dr. Sivakumar. Case presentations by Dr. Chetan, as already mentioned. Dr. Jagadish will be moderating sessions. and so I will be hosting the session, and Abhishek is here to coordinate. And obviously, what I will do now, I will just, because we have only how many, nine or eight people. We have a round of introduction before we go to the next step. Let me start with myself. Purnima, can you go ahead, please?
I'm Purnima, Associate Professor, Department of Clinical Psychology and part of the PRS. I'm Sai Lakshmi Gandhi, Associate Professor from the Department of Psychology.
I'm Dr. Chetan. I'm fellow in psychiatric rehabilitation. I'm Dr. Abhishek Pathak. I'm senior resident in psychiatric rehabilitation. Hi, this is Gubendran. Technically, I'm helping to them to do some live interaction and live conference, live creations. Thank you.
Kavendran is very modest. He's IT coordinator and is very IT, IT related stuff. Myself, Prabhat, I am the PI of the project ECHO.
I'm Dr. Sivakumar, work as assistant professor in the team.
My name is Jagdisha Tirthalde. I am a professor of psychiatry. I am going to moderate today's session.
I'm Santosh Chaturvedi. I'm a professor of psychiatry and I'm head of the psychiatric rehabilitation services team here, and we look forward to this inaugural program.
I'm Glory Joseph, nursing tutor in psychiatric rehabilitation center.
I'm Dr. R.P. Jagannathan, Assistant Professor of Psychiatric Social Work with the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Service.
I'm Dr. Krishna Prasad. I work as assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation.
I'm Dr. Harish. I'm working as assistant professor in psychiatric rehabilitation.
Okay. Now, what I'll do, I think, let's ask you to introduce. What I will do from my side for convenience, we'll unmute. Let's start with Dr. Anubhav. Anubhav, tell about yourself and which place you are logging in. We are unmuting from our side.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Anubhav Rathi. I'm logging in from Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh. I'm into private practice here right now. And till last year, I was senior resident at GTB Hospital. I've done my MD from KGMC Lucknow, and I'm a junior of Dr. Sivakumar only.
So nice of you, Anubhav. I think it's very nice to see, in spite of busy practice, you could took some time to sit and correct it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Yeah. Divya, do you want to introduce Divya?
Hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Divya. I'm doing my MD microbiology. I'm from Karnataka. I've logged in from Karnataka. Hassan.
Thanks, Divya. It's nice to see other professors, microbiologists, are interested in learning. It's very good. Dr. Nitin, our own student, I think his mic is not working. Nitin Kandapuram. Chalimuttu Trust. Can you please go ahead? I think introduce your team member also.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, and we appreciate the efforts taken by NIMANS. And this is Babu, psychiatric social worker basically, and I'm director programs of Chalimuttu Trust and Research Foundation from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. And along with me, I have the privilege of introducing my staff team.
Sir, good afternoon. I am Ramu. Basically, by profession, psychiatric social workers. I was in the field of psychosocial rehabilitation for the past 2.5 decades. So I am directly handling with our persons with mental illness in the rehabilitation home.
So good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, madam. Let us introduce myself. I am Mr. Sahai Raj, psychiatric social worker. I have been as a psychiatric social worker in the rehabilitation setting for the past 2.5 years.
I am Sangaramanian, basically psychiatric social worker. I am team leader for past 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can mute. Mr. Ram, Dr. Ram from Vijayawada, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. I am Ravi Bhargav Ram. I am an educational psychologist from Vijayawada. I am a certified school counselor from NCRT. So I am practicing as a school psychologist in Vijayawada. I am the MD for, I am the MAC director for Live 360 Degrees Psychiatric Services Private Limited.
Thank you very much, Sampath. Mr. Sampath, do you want to go ahead and tell?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Sampath. Fine. We'll come back if you miss out. Scarf, nice to see you again. Yeah, where is Scarf? Yes. Okay, your camera, I think, video is not working. Scarf Group, do you want to introduce your... Yeah. Mr. Sampath, can you please go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, be loud.
Somebody is on.
Scarf Group, do you want to... Is your mic is working now? Will you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. This is Subhashini, psychologist from SCARF.
Thank you. And Suhasini, you are alone or do you have team member there?
No, we have team members, sir. We have DNB students, primary and secondary candidates.
Excellent.
And we also have psychiatric social workers and other psychologists with us.
Oh, beautiful. So I hope your camera works faster and you can all see you. So next. Now I will pass this to Professor S.K. Chaturvedi, who is the head of the department, to open it up.
Once again, welcome to this innovative and first ever program of online teaching on psychosocial rehabilitation. And as you would see, we have a series of programs coming up in the initial few months. As we know that the road to recovery is incomplete and it is very bumpy without actual holistic rehabilitation, giving due importance to not only social factors, psychological factors, shelter-related issues, financial issues, and of course, importantly, vocational and occupational aspects. As you would have seen, we have a multidisciplinary team. There are many firsts in this team. We have a first fellow who is going to present a case after some time. We also have the first full-time consultant in psychiatric rehabilitation, which is Dr. Shiv Kumar. And now we have other team members who have joined, Dr. Krishna Prasad and Dr. Harish, and we have a first full-time psychiatric social work consultant, Dr. Aarti. So we plan to do a lot of activities, and Dr. Prabhat and the VKN team at NIMHANS has come forward to assist us, and we would be having a number of programs online as well as offline. So without much ado, I would request the moderator, Dr. Jagdisha, to start the proceedings.
Good afternoon. Today we have two sessions. One is a didactic session on welfare benefits for the disabled. Dr. Sivakumar will be doing it. Followed by that, we will have about 10-15 minutes of discussion. We want all of you to contribute and maybe ask questions and clarify things, especially related to your own state welfare benefits. And finally, we will have Dr. Chetan presenting an interesting patient that he has himself handled in rehabilitation setting. Sivakumar, will you start?
Yeah, I think give us 2 minutes time. We have slides to share. Yeah. Sampath, that group is from Spandana Psychiatric Center, so they will have been from the too.
Yeah, go start.
Good afternoon, one and all. Thanks for your interest in psychiatric rehabilitation and logging in into this maiden venture. We look forward to interacting with you periodically once in a month and learn from best practices in different centers. The theme which we have taken for today in the didactics is how to use welfare benefits as a rehabilitation tool. We will list some of the benefits and how it can possibly be used. The co-authors for this presentation are Ms. Swarupa and Dr. B.P. Narula. Not every person with psychiatric disorder is a person with psychiatric disability. This is a fact. And let us have a look at what Indian law says. According to the existing PWD Act of 1995, there are 7 conditions which are termed to be disabling. There are 2 of them are from mental health, that is mental retardation and mental illness. According to the Right to Persons with Disability Bill, which is under consideration of the Parliament, now there are 5 conditions, and those 5 conditions are listed here. And the Government of India has set a threshold of 40% for any disability to avail disability benefits. All of us are familiar with the IDEA scale for certifying disability for mental illness. And according to this, mental illness has been defined as any mental disorder other than mental retardation. There are certain places which continue to follow the 4 disorder rule, but according to the official website of the Chief Commissioner of Disabilities of India, it says that mental illness is any mental disorder other than mental retardation. So it is not confined to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, and dementia alone. According to the projected burden of severe mental illness, this is from a Government of India publication dated 2005. We would like to draw your attention to the figures for 2010. So in 2010, the All India population is about 116 crores. And if we look at the number of people who have major mental disorders, the amount is about 7.5 crores. And people with schizophrenia alone would amount to about 35 lakhs. Now let us have a statistics of the Census of India 2011. This is unique because this was the first census which enumerated the number of people with mental illness for the first time in Indian history. And we would be surprised to see that the number of people who are considered disabled according to the census is as low as 7 lakhs. This can be contrasted with the figure of major mental disorders. Just in 2010, it is supposed to be 7 crores, but according to the census, it's only 7 lakhs. And if we contrast this with mental retardation, it is about 15 lakhs. So according to the official census, there are 2 times the number of mentally retarded people rather than persons with mental illness. But overall, the total burden is about 2.6 crores. Recently, there was an article in Times of India. This was based on Right to Information Act, in which a person had requested the ministry to give out details of the number of disability certificates issued in India between 2010 to 2013. And they found it was only about 10.8 million. And the number of disabled people according to the 2011 census is 26.8. So by this they say that only 38% of disabled are actually certified. So there is a big gap between the number of people who are disabled, even according to the official census data, which itself may be an underestimate, and the number of people who are actually availing the disability certificate. And if you look at publications from India, publications from different centers, from Yatanpal Singh Balhara from North India and Kashyap et al. From South India near Mangalore, both of them state that disability certificates are issued more for mental retardation than mental illness. And disability benefits continue to elude a majority of people with psychiatric disability. So what are the welfare benefits which will be beneficial for a person with psychiatric disability? All of us know about disability pension. The quantum of pension varies according to the state where we reside in, because disability is a state subject. In the state of Karnataka, people with 40 to 75% disability get 500 rupees per month as pension, and if it is more than 75%, which is considered as severe disability, they get rupees 1,200 per month. Much of our clientele is from the lower socioeconomic status. The caregivers earn as low as 3,000 to 4,000 rupees per month. So for them, when the disabled person earns 1,200, it is a big boon in carrying on with their daily, day-to-day life, as well as in pursuing treatment, meeting the logistics costs of coming to the hospital. The other is railway concessions. But it is the unfortunate truth that as of now, concessions are not available for persons with mental illness. If you look at this screenshot taken from the Indian Railways website pretty recently, all other disabilities under the PWD Act, they come under the category of people who can avail the concessions, but mental illness has been not been included in this particular list. And the quantum of reservation also differs. So right now for mental health, it's only the mentally retarded persons who can avail these benefits, and one escort is also eligible for availing this concession. And it can range as much as 75% to as less as maybe 50% according to the class where the person travels in. This is going to be useful to a lot of our patients with mental retardation, because many of them live in peripheral areas and they need to travel to a long distance to avail treatment. So this is a provision which can be used to bring down the indirect expenses in availing treatment. There has been a recent initiative from the Ministry of Railways. Till now, to avail this railway concession, people had to take a copy of the disability certificate and go physically to the counters to avail it. Recently, it has come up with a notification whereby persons with disability who have been certified, they can approach the nearest railway zonal office and apply for a photo identity card. The person will be given an identity number, and with this, disability concession can be availed even in IRCTC. So the next time when you log in, you will find a small radio button beneath saying that I am availing the handicap concession. So once you tick it on, the person can avail it for themselves as well as for one escort in the case of persons with mental retardation. Travel benefits is another boom. In the state of Karnataka, our patients who avail our services in Bangalore, if they pay 660 rupees one time, they can avail free bus travel within Bangalore for 1 year. So many of our patients who live in the outskirts of Bangalore, if they had to spend from their pocket, just the cost of traveling to the rehab center and going back will be anywhere between 50 to 75 rupees. So with 660 rupees, they are able to regularly avail our services. For air travel, concessions are available in Air India for persons with disability, and the concession quantum is about 25%. Income tax deduction is another less known welfare benefit which is not very commonly used by persons with disability. One of the key attractions of this income tax deduction is, to avail this, you need to have a disability certificate. Next, there is a form to avail the certificate, and you need not run from pillar to post. Just the signature of the treating mental health professional alone is sufficient. You can file it online. I believe most of us file our income tax returns online. So there is a provision under it, under either section 80U or under section 80DD. So once people say that I have a certificate, they can claim that exemption from their income. And this is available either for a person with disability who may be working and earning an income, or this person may have a property in his name, say a house from which they are deriving rental income, or a fixed deposit given in their name by their parents. So they can avail this deduction. But if this person with disability is dependent on another individual, then the caregiver can avail this quantum of deduction from their income. We find this practically useful in our routine practice. We find a lot of people either with mental illness or mental retardation who are severely disabled being taken care of by their siblings. If the sibling is in the 30% bracket, that is if they earn more than 10 lakhs, then this amounts to a deduction of 1,25,000. So straight away you are saving about 37,500 from your annual income tax outgo. So this is something which, as mental health professionals, all of us need to be actively utilizing for the welfare of our patients as well as caregivers. And in the recent budget, the amount of deduction has been increased. Whether it was 50,000 for more than 40% disability and 1 lakh for severe disability. The Honorable Minister of Finance has increased it from this current financial year to 75,000 for more than 40% disability, and for more than 80% disability, it is rupees 1,25,000. And it is also worthwhile noting that according to the other concessions, any person with more than 75% disability is considered to have severe disability, but according to the Income Tax Act, it is 80%. So a person who has 75% disability can claim higher pension, but when it comes to income tax, they will be able to claim only 75,000. So it has to be more than 80%. A government employee who is in service and who takes care of a dependent person with disability has been exempted from routine exercise of transfer, subject to administrative constraints. Again, this is a recent order which was passed in 6th June of 2014. So if you have any person under your treatment who has a disabled dependent, you can issue a disability certificate and they can use this to stay in the same place. We find a lot of our caregivers who forego promotions because if they need to be promoted, they need to be transferred out, and this turns out to be in the detriment of the person with disability. So this is something which can be used for the welfare of the person with disability. The other concession which is available is transfer of pension of a Government of India employee, and the pension can be transferred in the following sequence. So after the person's death, first it goes to the spouse, If the spouse is not alive or has remarried, it goes to the permanently disabled children. If there are no permanently disabled children, it goes to the dependent parents. If there are no parents, then it goes to the permanently disabled siblings. So this is another provision which can be used. We have a lot of persons with disability whose parents have been in government service. So after their lifetime, this can be more than a disability pension, even an attraction for another family member to take care of them for the rest of their life. So this is a concession which the government of India gives, and here there is no distinction between whether a person has physical disability or mental disability. What matters is whether do you have a disability certificate or not. Niramaya scheme is a government of India initiative, and persons with autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation and multiple disabilities can avail this scheme. So under the scheme, a person can avail 1 lakh rupees health insurance per annum. The technicality here is, you may find that mental illness is not included in this, but if you look at the term multiple disability is any 2 disability from the PWD Act. So if you have any person with mental illness who also has another disability, they become technically eligible for this Niramaya scheme. And the fee for this is pretty nominal. It is 250 rupees one-time payment for a person with BPL card, and if a person does not have a BPL card, it is 500 rupees per annum. And the benefits under this particular scheme is, you will find overall limits under different headings. So for transportation cost, a person can get up to 1000 rupees, and for routine OPD based treatment, it is up to 8000 rupees. So many of our patients who come under this category, they can be encouraged to find out the nodal center in your respective state. So we have also given the website of this particular scheme, which gives all the addresses of different states and the nodal centers for that particular state. So you can encourage your patients to avail this particular scheme. And if you look at the overall limit of hospitalization, so even if the person has got hospitalized, say for a cataract surgery, it can technically be covered under this Niramaya scheme. So we have found this to be useful for a lot of our patients with mental retardation. According to the Indian law, there are job reservations for persons with disability, but according to the existing act, mental illness as well as mental retardation have been excluded. So it is 1% for blindness or low vision, 1% for hearing impairment, and 1% for locomotor disability. But it is a welcome move from the government of India that under the proposed Right to Persons with Disability Bill of 2014, we are getting 1% quota for autism, intellectual disability and mental illness as well. So this is likely to open up more jobs for us and for persons with disability. There are job reservations for persons with disability. It is about 3% for people in Group A or Group B posts, and about 5% for Group C and Group D government posts. There are official notifications of the jobs which are reserved for persons with disability, which you can note from the link which has been given here. The last list is in the year 2013, but unfortunately, there are no posts which are identified either for a person with mental retardation or mental illness, because this is according to the earlier act, that is 1995. And we are also told by government officials that there is a big backlog of vacancies which actually need to be filled for persons with disabilities. There is also this clause on non-discrimination in government employment. So government employee who acquires disability during service cannot be dispensed with. So a person who becomes visually disabled or acquires locomotor disability or develops mental illness cannot be dispensed from the service, but they can be shifted to some other post. But the key part here is the pay scale needs to be the same and the service benefits need to be the same. And promotion cannot be denied on the basis of disability. It also needs to be noted that the government can exempt establishments from these provisions. For example, a person is there in the army, the person develops mental illness and they find that this person may not be capable of using arms. So the government can actually exempt certain jobs from carrying on these provisions, while in general it will be valid for most other places. There are also incentives provided to the private sector. This is another provision which is not very well known. So if in the private sector a person employs a person with disability and gives them pay of up to rupees 25,000 rupees per month, the government pays the employer's contribution to the Provident Fund as well as the ESI for the first 3 years as an incentive. This is something which needs to be advertised a lot, so that the private sector employers take more and more persons with disability, and hopefully a lot of our people with psychiatric disability as well. In the state of Karnataka, there is a special employment exchange which has been outsourced by the Directorate of Differently Abled and Senior Citizens to an NGO called Enable India. This organization caters to persons with disability in the state of Karnataka alone. They offer online registrations as well as walk-in registrations. They have a certain list of documents to be submitted, verifications are done, and job matching is done prospectively. Education benefits are available in the Government of India, but we do not have data on the number of people who are availing this from psychiatric disability. According to the law, 3% reservation is available for PWD in government aided institutions, and scholarships are also available for pursuing various courses, including studying overseas for persons with disabilities. So one needs to be aware about this, and if we are seeing our patients with disability who come to our clinic, we can actively sensitize them about these provisions so that they can avail these scholarships. Loans are provided by the National Handicap Finance Development Corporation. The website address is given in this particular slide. They provide loans for setting up businesses, small-scale industrial units, to pursue courses, technical occupations. They also provide microcredit schemes of up to 25,000 rupees without any collateral. And the interest rate which is available is also pretty attractive. It is as low as 4% per annum. And there are schemes for financing NGOs as well as for parents Association of Mentally Retarded Persons. During our interactions with NHFDC, we got to know that a lot of these schemes are used by persons with locomotor disability or visual disability. So persons with psychiatric disability are not utilizing this much. So on behalf of NIMHANS, we are making efforts to liaison with it. And this is something which all of us need to know as mental health professionals. So these services are available and one needs to apply to avail all these services. Even though this particular scheme is not directly related to a welfare benefit, this is a recent social security initiative from the government. So if anyone has a disabled dependent with a bank account, so they can be enrolled in this Atal Pension Yojana. The monthly contribution is pretty low. So if you give that the person is guaranteed a particular monthly income after the age of 60 years, this is something which can be advertised in our OPDs. And we can ask all our patients as well as caregivers to actively utilize these schemes. And some basic financial education to all our caregivers as well as patients can also be useful. We find that a lot of our patients and caregivers actually keep money in their savings account, while a simple initiative like changing it into a fixed deposit may actually help them earn more income, and also to a certain extent helps in what after me issues. This is a pamphlet which we have brought out on behalf of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services. The English, Hindi and Kannada versions are available. It is available for free download from the NIMHANS website. You can also email us at nimhansrehab@gmail.com. We will be happy to mail you a soft copy of the same. Recently, an information center for persons with disability has been inaugurated in the NIMHANS OPD block. It is a joint initiative of the Department for Empowerment of Differently Abled and Senior Citizens, NIMHANS, and an NGO called Seva in Action. So this center will provide information about welfare benefits and also look at grievance redressal. This is a pretty recent initiative, as recent as a week back, that is on 18th June. We thank you for your patient listening. We would also invite you to submit articles in our Journal of Psychosocial Rehabilitation and Mental Health. The last 2 issues are out and the 3rd issue will be shortly out. So this is the ID in which you can submit. We hope you the presentation was useful. Look forward to comments and suggestions.
I think you want to tell the questions has come. Yeah. There is one question from MGM Medical College, Aurangabad, about Nirmaya scheme. Can it be availed all over?
Nirmaya scheme is available. Can be availed all over India. So it is by the Government of India under the National Trust Act. So it is available all over India. Please visit the website, which is niramayasscheme.com. You should be able to find out the nodal center for your state.
I think, Anubhav, why don't you unmute yourself, and your question is very relevant. You can go ahead with the questions. Yeah,
It is Karnataka specific. Now, if a patient of intellectual disability or say with mental illness is coming to me and they have their disability certificate, so what can I tell them that what all services are available in say in my state, Uttar Pradesh? Where can I access the specifics of these things for my state?
Is there a central place where you can access?
Their disability welfare department.
Yeah, there will be a person called a district disabled welfare officer for each and every district of the country. So you need to contact them, and they would be able to provide the details of all the benefits available in the area and the procedure to avail some of it. Because in private practice, what can be done is you can sensitize them. Try to make a license with the DDWO, get their contact number, get the office address, and inform about that to your patients.
Is it available?
Yeah.
Is it available online also? That's some website or something?
Some of these resources, all these details are not available online. To our knowledge, or it may be outdated. So it may be best to find out from.
Yeah,
the local
one thing that we would suggest is that you could download the brochure that we showed, or you can look into the slides that was presented. So if one of you could approach the state government and inquire, look, in Karnataka, the following facilities are available. What is it for us in UP? Maybe they will be able to explain to one of you, and then you can spread the word across and make it as a movement.
Thank you, sir.
I also wanted to know what about other states who will be participating here.
Yeah.
Just to have a share experiences of them think. Why not Chennai, Madurai group?
Yes, Madurai. Yeah.
Madurai group, what is your experience about the disability benefit in Tamil Nadu?
I'm representing Chalamuthu Trust and Research Foundation, and of course, it is few comments about the Niramaya scheme. Since Chalamuthu Trust have been recognized as state nodal agency partner for 3 years in the state, we have covering almost 10 districts a couple of years back. But almost the access to that Niramaya scheme in some of the eligible hospitals find it very difficult. But is there any possibility? That is why we have been also requesting the ministry to include MI in such schemes, and I don't think so. And one quite interesting fact from your PPT presentation, we found that the disability allowance maintenance grant that the Karnataka state is receiving is based on the disability level. The state is paying like 500 to 1,200. But whereas in the state of Tamil Nadu, it has been revised to from 1,000 to 1,500 maintenance grant. So this piece of information we'd like to share at this juncture. Thank you.
We have a list.
Introduce it then.
Anubhav had asked about a list that possibly is available of the disability welfare officers. At least the list of disability welfare officers in each state who was in charge was available on the Social Justice and Ministry website at least a couple of months ago. We need to check for each state who was in charge, and from them possibly you could go to the District Disabled Welfare Officer, the DDW.
Contact details are available.
Contact details and the address is available. Most of them are government servants, so they do get transferred. So you may have a new person coming in, they may not have updated the website, but you could check that up online in the ministry website.
Another information in this regard is usually it's the non-met organizations which issue disability certificates, but at least in the state of Tamil Nadu, we are told 3 NGOs have been given permission by the government to issue disability certificates. So MS Chalamuthu Trust, SCARF, as well as Banyan Chennai, they are issuing disability certificates. So this is something in which the professionals actually come together and then work. It can help in benefiting additional patients.
Swamnath has logged in, but Dr. Swamnath ji has logged in.
Yeah.
The system today. Let him speak.
No, sir. Yeah. Dr. Swaminath, can you hear us?
You must have logged in through mobile devices. Mics are not visible. Logged in.
Yeah.
You can see us.
Yeah. I have a question to Sivakumar. If a person with mental illness has mental retardation, would he qualify for a multiple disability?
Technically, it is multiple disability.
So,
So more than one disability becomes multiple disability. So this can technically be used to avail the Niramaya scheme. So a person with mild mental retardation with psychosis NOS can avail Niramaya scheme. Likewise, a person with hearing disability and mental illness can also avail the Niramaya scheme.
the other issue that I want to raise is that though in the central government has gazetted the procedure of certifying mental disability according to IDEAS, different states have different rules. Like I heard from Dr. Harish yesterday that in Andhra Pradesh, not all mental illnesses are covered, even if the person with, say, an organic psychosis is disabled and has an IDEA score of, say, more than 15 or 16, he wouldn't get any benefits because in the state of Andhra Pradesh, the disability certificates are issued only to a few disorders that are named in their rules, isn't it? Yes. You want to say which are the disorders?
Schizophrenia.
Louder.
Schizophrenia. Another one is bipolar disorder. Third one is obsessive compulsive disorder. And fourth one is dementia. These are the only 4 conditions which are covered right now under the government order of Andhra Pradesh.
Yeah. So each state has to look up into their rules and see whether all patients are covered or not. In the state of Karnataka, at least they are not very particular which diagnosis does the person with mental disability carries.
There is another question from MGM Medical College, Aurangabad. Can a certificate issued by a private psychiatrist is valid to avail these facilities?
It has to be issued by the government facility right now. But in the state of Tamil Nadu, they have given this permission for 3 NGOs alone to issue these certificates. So as of now, as a rule, it is by the government psychiatrist. Or
By a board. Medical board, which happens to be district psychiatrist. And then it has to be ratified by the district disability welfare officer. So, if the district disability welfare officer will tell whether the private psychiatrist disability certificate is valid or not, because that is the bottleneck. There you will find that he would refuse to sign unless it is coming from a board.
So can I suggest that since there are so many different rules and regulations for disability in different states, why don't one of the people who have joined in take up this task and ask psychiatrists and rehab centers all over the country and try to get one compilation of documents so that if there is any discrepancy, it can be dealt with in a different way. Otherwise, at least we will have one source. So if somebody is willing to volunteer, either from any of the people who have joined in, you can do that. Or otherwise, if you feel that a man should take over, we can take over. But I think it might be a good idea just to get the information about what are the various benefits, how to get them, what is the amount they get, who can certify, and various things like those. And we can all work on that.
Scarf is a question, but why don't you unmute yourself and ask? Nice to hear from you. Your suggestion includes.
Dr. Shivakumar, like, where do we get this APL, BPL card? Do they give us a card, or it is already listed? The names are listed under that category. What exactly is that?
Under the Niramaya scheme, one has to provide the BPL card, which they have secured from the government. If they have to avail the provision of 250 rupees one-time payment. If a person does not have it, then they can pay 500 rupees per annum to renew it annually. And the scheme usually opens up only twice in a year when they do the enrollment. It is in the months of April and September. So one has to maybe send in the application at least 1 to 2 months prior to these deadlines.
No, is the question how to get the BPL APL certificate itself?
Yeah. I think the website will guide us to do that, right?
No. But Aarti, can you tell how to get the APL BPL card?
At least in Karnataka, the food civil and supplies department handles this. BPL is below poverty line and APL is above poverty line. So it's like a ration card where if you are below the poverty line according to the state and the government regulations, it's in a different color and you can get certain ration benefits and other things. Whereas if it's an APL card, you do not get those benefits. So everyone in every state, according to the government food and supplies services department, should be able to avail of this card.
Yeah, in Karnataka, it is the ration card that divides people into APL and BPL.
Yeah, now we got it. Like actually in Tamil Nadu also it is the ration card which comes in different colors, the green one, white color, which distinguish between the APL and BPL. Now we got it. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Other question is from Dr. Ensil Thodi. Kerala Social Welfare Minister has a scheme named Ashwas Kiran where the caregiver of chronic mentally ill and mentally retarded persons are provided financial assistance. Is there similar scheme in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and other states?
No, not to our knowledge.
Not in Karnataka, but Tamil Nadu we can ask.
Yeah, I think the question is that is there a similar scheme like Asa Kiran for the caregiver of chronic mental illness and mental retarded are provided with financial assistance? When I will not mention how much it is. So the question is there any scheme, similar scheme in Tamil Nadu or it's Andhra Pradesh also? Because Vijayawada is
So Tamil Nadu doesn't have any scheme like that.
Okay.
Now, Harish, anything in Andhra?
No, nothing for caregivers.
You can ask.
Actually, I'm not aware of that, but let you know, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Pfizer, we are unmuting you. Just tell a little more about it. It's very interesting to know, caregiver of mental illness has given such a nice benefit. Can you go ahead? Yeah, we can see.
Sorry. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. We have a caregiver organization named Shreyas here in our hospital, named Raja Rehabilitation Center. We are a registered organization, and here in Kerala Social Welfare Ministry, there is a specific scheme called Ashwas Kiran. This was actually intended for debilitated patients and for cancer patients, palliative patients. Now, because of the drive of the various organizations, they have extended this financial assistance to chronic schizophrenics and mentally retarded also. So they are being provided an amount 500 to 600 rupees or so per month for the supporting the chronic mentally ill and chronic mentally retarded clients. I don't know whether these schemes are available in other states, and I would like to know if there is central government is providing any assistance for caregivers as well. Somebody could enlighten us with information.
I think Dr. Pfizer, it's a nice information. Probably other states can take it up and actively work it out. Central government does provide.
Thank you. We are not aware of any central government scheme for caregivers.
I think even in the proposed mental health care bill, help for caregivers is probably not there. So maybe it is something which should be included.
Yes. Thank you.
That was covered. Yeah. I think if there are no more questions, let us move to the next program. That is, Dr. Chetan is going to present a case where a person with mental retardation and comorbidity is going through rehabilitation, and we have found some success and some challenges. A discussion about how to go about it further will help us. Swaminath yesterday.
Yeah. Option.
Cannot
They like it from the mobile.
Cannot be.
They can visible as. Unfortunately, they can be not.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation on rehabilitation in institute setting. This is our psychiatric rehabilitation services NIMHANS. This building houses the department. Before I start the case discussion, let me tell you what we do in rehabilitation services. Here we offer a kind of variety of services like daycare center. We have around 15 sections through which we cater to the needy. We also have inpatient facility for those who need it. We also, when patients get admitted in different units, there are about 6 units in Department of Psychiatry. Through that also we get referrals to keep them engaged mostly, and for other reasons also. And we also have a OPD facility on Wednesdays to cater to the needs. We approach through multidisciplinary team, and we the other name for this is also recovery oriented services. Through recovery oriented services, we provide a lot of services like developing work habit, basic training in some occupations, training in different skills, individual and family counseling, assisting in pursuing education and job, etc. Let us have a glimpse of the daycare center we have. We have many sections like bakery section, leather, candle, mat weaving, computer section, domestic skill section, tailoring, bamboo, recreation section, horticulture, printing, crafts, carpentry, weaving, plastic molding, etc. These are some of the products which we prepare at our psychiatric rehabilitation services. Now coming to today's presentation, the case description. Mr. S is a 24 years single male who is educated up to 9th standard and comes from a low socioeconomic status. He is a resident of Bangalore, comes from about 14 kilometers from NIMHANS. He is diagnosed to have mild mental retardation, IQ of 68, psychosis NOS since 2 years, past history of 3 episodes of febrile seizures at 5 years of age, past history of recurrent depressive disorder 4 years ago for 2 years, and undernourishment. His body mass index is 12.19. Coming to his family, he lives with his mother, who is 40-year-old housemaid. She earns about 3,000 rupees per month. His sister is married and stays apart. Coming to the early history, pre, peri and postnatal was uneventful. There is gross delay in motor, social and speech development. Information was not available for cognitive development. He had 3 episodes of febrile seizures, and which were treated adequately. Currently, he is not on any anti-epileptic drugs. When they showed to NIMHANS for the first time in 2005, it was because he was referred by his school in view of his academic difficulties in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Binekamat test showed IQ of 68, and some advices were given like change of subjects, additional inputs for basic reading, spelling, and maths. In 2007, they came back again when he was in 7th standard. As both parents were working, they could not spare much time for his training. And in 2011, there was history of 1 month of withdrawal from others, fearful, and there were ideas of persecution, pervasive low mood, crying spells, and suicidal attempts. He was shown to a private psychiatrist here in Bangalore, and he was treated with fluoxetine 20 mg and olanzapine 2.5 mg with good response. They discontinued the treatment after 2 months since he got all right. In 2012, there was relapse of symptoms. They showed to the same private psychiatrist, and same medications were given for about 6 months, and it was stopped according to the advice. In 2013, He came with anger outbursts with minimal provocation and threatening to kill himself. The treating unit at that time thought that it might be because of the critical environment at home. He was diagnosed to have mild MR with recurrent depressive disorder, although no medications were started, and he was referred to psychiatric rehabilitation services in April for occasional rehabilitation. Here, we went on to assess him in different areas. Some of the areas which we assessed were his activities of daily living. He could take bath, groom and eat and dress by himself. He could travel alone. He knew denominations of currency but could not calculate. He could read and write but with some difficulty. He had got a job in tailoring shop with the help of neighbors near his home. They had tried to teach him a lot of tailoring skills. Initially, although he wanted to learn tailoring, he had put in all his efforts, but he could not learn the tailoring skills. Hence, he was put up with the job of helper. In this helper job, he would fold clothes, he would get tea and coffee from nearby shops. He was paid about 10 rupees per day on humanitarian grounds. Although the shop did not need such a person for as a helper, the existing tailors could do that job. The shop owner thought that he is a person with intellectual disability, mother is a housemaid, they do not earn. So on humanitarian grounds, he used to give rupees 10 per day. Some of the needs because of which they came to rehabilitation or NIMHANS were, for consultation, the needs were management of irritability and anger. Even the therapist at that time felt that the management of irritability and anger should happen. This usually used to happen when he used to try new things in the tailoring shop. He used to try to learn, and over a period of time, after about 2 to 3 days, he would get frustrated of not able to learn as others. So he would get frustrated and he would show the anger on his mother. In his activities of daily living, there was no need. In instrumental daily activities, mother felt he should learn to travel alone. We felt that along with this, he needs to learn calculation too. And in academics, we thought like calculation and other functional academics needs to be looked after. And for employment, mother said that he needs to get training in tailoring because he is already working, and probably from helper he could be a tailor by himself, was mother's need. And we also thought he needs skills development in this, and probably he can be put as a tailor in one of the shops. And in social, family did not feel anything, but we felt that there should be reduction in the criticality. Treatment wise, both of us felt that there is need for medications. We also assessed him on rehabilitation readiness at the time of presentation. This tool has been provided by Farkas et al. In 2000, which has 5 components: the need for change, commitment, self-awareness, environmental awareness, and personal closeness. It is a scale which goes from 1 to 5. 1 is the least and 5 is the highest in this. Here, as we can see, there was need for change. It was very high. Commitment was also very high, but he was not aware of his strengths at that time, and strength and resources in the environment he was not aware at all. And personally, he was only close to mother, and even there were some amount of criticality. There was the family dynamics was pathological at that time. And we'll open this for discussion. If you have any doubts till now, till this presentation, we'll be ready to take it.
Yeah, this is how he presented to us, and this was our initial assessment. At this stage, I mean, from here we would have started our work. If people want to ask questions or about the presentation itself, in-house people are also welcome. All right, if there are no questions, I will ask Chetan to.
There is no questions. If they want to ask, unmute your mic and they can talk.
Yeah, you can also unmute and ask, or they can send it by chat also, right? Yeah. If you have questions, don't reserve. Yes, somebody is raising their hand. Scarf, you have a question? Please unmute yourself and ask the question. Yes.
Yes, Scarf, you can go.
No questions, sir. No, we can proceed. No questions.
All right. Yeah, it was by mistake.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So is he any bigger for him, sir? Sir, is audible, sir?
Do you have any behavior problems?
Behavior problems were only his anger and irritability, and at times he used to hit his mother.
Okay, sir. Other than any, no any behavior problems, sir? Any behavior problems?
Apart from this, there were no other issues.
Okay.
Chetan, this is Babu.
Yes.
Yeah, nice presentation. But you have mentioned in your assessment different from 0 to 6. You have shown it in a graphical presentation, and 5 domains you have mentioned. Yes, from rehabilitation readiness, from 0 to 6, and 5 domains you have mentioned. Is it any scale or parameters that you have used?
This is a scale developed by Farkas et al. In 2000, sir, from University of Boston.
Okay.
So you can do it and tell a little more about what this scale does. Why did we use it?
Yeah, exactly. Can you throw light on how we can assess this so that we will also try to use this near clinical practice?
Yeah, Kumar, you want to?
Rehabilitation readiness is decided by the clinician by an interview. So one needs to understand the person. So it takes some time before we come to a conclusion about this. The first domain is perceived need for change. In the rehabilitation setting, we get a lot of patients where the person seems to be comfortable with what they are doing, but the caregivers are not comfortable. So the first domain assesses whether the person perceives a need to change the situation where they are. So that is the first domain. The second domain is there are people who may have perceived need for change, but they may not be working towards it. For example, a person says that I want to get a job, but over the last 2 years, the person has not made any effort to prepare a CV, go out and meet prospective employers to get a job. So that is the commitment. The third domain is self-awareness. That is awareness about one's strengths and one's own limitations. So a person who is 28 years old, has studied only till 10th standard, says that he wants to become an engineer. So here, this may not be rational. So here the self-awareness domain may be low. The fourth domain is environmental awareness. That is understanding of one's own strengths and limitations, and is the person aware of the opportunities available to them in their age and with their qualifications. And the fifth domain is personal closeness to any individual who can egg on this person and cheering him up when the chips are down. So a person who helps this person achieve this particular need for change. For example, we have had people, there was a person with mental retardation, not this case, where the person said that I want to do something, I want to go for a job because my younger sister has recently finished college and she is ready to go. So here the perceived need for change was there. When we looked at commitment, the person's commitment was pretty good because the person started coming here on time to the rehabilitation center, was punctual, was behaved, showed a lot of interest in all the activities. When it came to self-awareness, over a period of time, we understood that she was clear that she cannot do certain things. So she understood that I can do simple activities like cutting, counting, or making baskets, and her aspirations were not beyond that. But environmental awareness was pretty low. Even though she had these strengths, she did not know that there were organizations or sheltered workshops which will cater to people like her and also offer a salary. And personal closeness in this case was pretty good. The family members were very supportive. So once we assess the person, we can identify where the need is. So in the patient which is registered, environmental awareness was very poor. We just gave them resources of sheltered workshops near our home. And we put her in contact, and we also gave a letter, referral letter to that particular sheltered workshop. The person is now going to the sheltered workshop and doing well. Things may not be the same in different cases. We may get a lot of patients where there is no perceived need for change. So in those cases, we need to find out why isn't the person perceiving any change. There may be instances where the family members are very rich, they have money, and the person knows deep within his heart that even if I do not earn, my parents will take care of me. So it gives you certain domains on which we need to concentrate instead of going for training and activity scheduling directly. So it allows us to understand domains on which we need to concentrate. So the most important thing is the perceived need for change.
We should also look at this in view of probably motivation and strategies. If somebody has low need, if somebody is not contemplating, if they are in pre-contemplation, then we push them to contemplation. Similarly, if somebody has no perceived need for change, first we need to improve that. And then if there is no commitment, we need to improve that. Here, as we can see, since there was no self-awareness, there was low environmental awareness and low personal closeness, we try to improve these so that the person is rehab ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we have this access scale so that because still the need, commitment, or the 5 domains, still we have to go with the subdomains, it seems, the range. So can we have the access of this tool through mail or somewhere?
Yeah, there is a PDF document available in the Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation, Boston. It provides certain details of this particular scale, but they also offer official training. So we have been using this in our clinical practice, but maybe that is a document which you can download.
Yeah, in order to maybe use it as a research tool, you would have to get permission from the authors.
We need to be trained, and the cost is around $3,000 per head. So
excluding travel.
I think what I think Siva can do is that you can send a link to them.
Yes.
Let them follow it up, and like we have used, so that it can be used. I think we'll do it.
The link is given.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Now, coming to the interventions, what we did. Since I said there was low self-awareness, environmental awareness, and personal closeness, we thought of initially taking this up further because the mother wanted upgradation in his work ability. So we thought of giving outpatient-based interventions in the initial few sessions. Firstly, we had allowed mother to ventilate. We had also provided psychoeducation to the mother on intellectual disability he had, and we also had explained that he is a slow learner, and she had a lot of expectation in the past. So expectation reality matching was done. Mother was encouraged to decrease her expectations, and disability certificate was provided, and counseling on the benefits available were told. Right now he is availing disability pension and bus pass. We thought of giving him supported employment. He was asked to continue his current job, and support would be given on outpatient basis. We thought of this because he was already working in an integrated setting in the community. That is what we all hope for. And he was already getting remuneration of rupees 300 per month. And we thought of liaising with the tailor for the skills development. And prospect of a regular job near his home was always there. So what we did was we wrote a letter of appreciation to the tailoring shop owner, appreciating for his work, his efforts in teaching this person with intellectual disability. We also told him that he's a slow learner, so he needs to be taught in the way he could understand. Probably he would take more time than others to understand. But with all these efforts, in around August, he had come to us in April, and he came back in August with the complaints of irritability, aggressive and assaultive tendency. He had developed a delusion of reference. And because of this, he had quarreled with the shop owner, and he had left going to the shop. The diagnosis was revised, and tablet Risperidone was started because it was available for free in, although olanzapine was started in the past, his BMI was low, we thought of adding olanzapine, but it was not available for free, so we had added Risperidone. And the needs, as I had told earlier, out of this, with this OPD based interventions, we had reduced the criticality of mother, and we had started them on medications. But there were still more needs left, like management of irritability and anger, traveling, training and upgradation, and skills development. For this, since we could not give supported employment at his place, so we thought of changing the strategy from place and train to train and place model. What are these place and train place model? This is a train and place model is a model wherein a person, there is an inherent assumption that person with disability requires skills training before placement, and they'll be trained in a supported environment where they'll be trained in certain skills like sheltered workshop, like training centers, like daycare centers, and then they'll be put for work. Whereas in place and train model, all people are motivated to work is what they think, and they have inherent ability to learn from their challenges. And person with disability needs to be reintegrated into the mainstream workplace as soon as possible. And train and place is probably optimal for less motivated persons, needs specialized inputs for skill acquisition and activity scheduling, and who is not symptomatically stable probably. Whereas place and train model is optimal for symptomatically stable, motivated, who have acquired basic skills in the job but can learn further on the job. Some of the challenges we thought train and place model has are dependency on the center, socializing into disability, and probably it might constitute an entrapping niche. Whereas the challenges are job placement in place and train model. And here, again, we'll go back to the needs. The training and upgradation skills, development upgradation. For this, we thought we'll ask him to come here. And what did we achieve by him coming here? We achieved management of his irritability and anger. We also achieved he could travel alone now, and training and skills development was provided, and medications and reduction in criticality were provided on outpatient basis. Some of the things we are yet to provide are probably calculation ability, functional academics, and upgradation and job placement. Now I invite the panel to say what were probably the factors which led to this outcome. We invite you all for the discussion now. These were the needs, and the ones which are in red, you can see they were all met. What were the probable factors which led to this? Later on, I will tell what we intervened and how we made this possible. But let us see in general what could have happened.
What do you think was responsible for reduction of his irritability and anger? Anyone wants to respond?
There is one response from Dr. Anubhav Rathi, medications.
Yeah. Chetan, you want to respond? Was it medication that reduced his irritability and anger?
Yeah. In general, all of us would agree that medications had made a difference, but it's not the sole reason probably for him for the decrease in irritability and anger. There were many other reasons too.
Dr. Anubhav Rathi has answered supportive environment too.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, supportive environment in the daycare, you mean?
Or at home?
You can unmute, Dr. Rathi.
Both.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Rathi, you can speak whatever you...
Yeah, I think both supportive environment, both at home as well as the rehabilitation department has worked for him, because by reducing the criticality of the mother through psychoeducation, so that has led to reduced expressed emotions and is getting reduction in irritability and anger.
What do you think as to how did the criticality come down?
Mainly with the psychoeducation which was provided by the rehabilitation department to the mother, that like explaining that he's a slow learner, and how with normal training he needs some special attention or extra attention, and he has different requirements than normal children. So so when the mother came to know that this is the thing with him and it's not his fault, so the expressed emotions will get reduced automatically.
Yes. And I just want to highlight one fact here, that when people think of vocational training centers, they tend to think that it's only for training them in one skill, but it goes a lot beyond that. So this is a case in example. So I don't think he has learnt a great skill here, but it has the conducive environment here, scheduling of his day, fixing a routine for himself, and some welcome attitude by the staff here. All those things would go a long way in reduction of the so-called behavioral problems, irritability, anger, etc. Skill learning also happens. So we want to highlight the fact that when you send a person for a rehabilitation center for any skills training, it's not just the skills training that happens, it is a lot more than that. Yeah.
MS Chilam to Trust, you want to tell something about family dynamics?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Babu, you can go ahead with the question.
No. With this case presentation, one of my staff team would like to know about have gone through this family dynamics. Have gone through that in spite of whatever the presentation you have made. Is there any critical gaps in that family issues?
Family dynamics assessment.
Yeah. Did you do any formal?
No, we did not do any formal assessment of the family dynamics. We initially, when we assessed what was happening, it was pretty clear to us that because he used to get angry, he used to get frustrated in his workplace, and he would go and hit his mother or shout at his mother, and mother also would feel irritated, and she also would shout at him, and a lot of critical comments were passed. We thought of handling it by ourselves, and with probably common sense approach, we had handled that.
Do you want to highlight on the traveling alone aspect? That is a big challenge. You want to do it now, or you want to do it later?
Like, let us ask them as to what probably helped him in traveling alone, because he had not learned this skill of traveling alone. Let me tell you, from where he comes, it's about 14 kilometers away from Nimans. He has to change one bus while coming here, and his reading and writing abilities are pretty low, and he can't identify numbers. He identifies currency notes by their colors, not by their numbers. So probably here in Bangalore, there are Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation buses. They have numbers and names written on it. He's not very good at reading and writing and identifying numbers. So how could he learn traveling alone?
Yeah, I think we will come to that next. Maybe you go ahead. Take of time.
Yeah.
So coming to what led to these outcomes, we should not forget the contributions of different people involved in this. Let us first tell about the contribution of the mother. She tried to promote his independence by getting disability benefits like disability pension and bus pass, and she taught him to travel alone. Many behavioral principles were used in this. Although she did not read any textbook on psychology, she, using her common sense, had done a lot of work with the person. She had used modeling, allowing him to take risks, and social reinforcement as a tool for helping him to travel alone. What she did was, she took him every time they came to the OPD, and she used to teach him as to this is the number of the bus. You only remember these numbers, and this is the bus driver and conductor who goes and comes to this area. They are all route drivers and conductors, so they'll be available every day. So this is the person. You remember this person, and you also remember these 2 or 3 digits. That's all. You don't remember anything. So she made him travel with him. After a period of time, she asked him to teach her. That is, he would tell her that this is the bus I want to travel, and he would travel. Initially, he had made a lot of mistakes in this. Mother did not immediately jump and tell that, okay, this is wrong, you should not do this, what did I teach you? Instead, she patiently waited. She boarded the bus with him. When the bus went to a different place, when this person told, okay, this is not the bus, probably we should have caught. She told, yeah, this is not the bus, we have made a mistake. So we'll learn again. So they went back again, came in the bus the next day. So with this, he was able to learn how to travel. Then after this, she would send him in the first bus. She would travel in the next bus, which would take about 10 to 20 minutes. She would see whether he has gotten down in any of the other bus stops. After this, when he learned to travel alone, when she had a feeling that he has learned to travel alone, she would send him in the morning, she would come in the evening and pick him up. By this strategy, she taught him, although we did not intervene. It's her idea as to how to teach him to travel alone. With this, she had taught him how to travel alone. Also, she had taken some initiatives in job placement. she had seen a person with intellectual disability who was in their neighborhood, who was going for a job in a garments factory. She went and spoke to that person and asked him where, in which place he is placed. And she went with that person, met the garments factory owner and spoke to them. And the garments factory owners had asked Mr. S to be shown to them. They would assess his skills and later probably give him employment. Apart from the contributions of the mother, let us now come to the institution-based setting. What did the daycare help? How did the daycare help him? We helped in medication adherence. That is, we would frequently check whether he is taking medications, what medications he is on, his symptomatic status, assess and revise the strategy accordingly. Providing a work habit, he had a work habit now coming here. He had to get up early in the morning, come here, work for some time, develop work ethics here, and then go back and be at home. This provided a lot of help, regular observation, and skills development, needless to say. Some therapeutic elements of the daycare center, apart from skills training, are respite care, like reducing face-to-face contact. This had helped also in reducing the criticality of the mother. Non-judgmental environment and acceptance here in daycare center. A lot of people here, almost all the people here are with disability, one kind or the other kind, whether it be it intellectual disability or mental illness. They are all disabled. So here there is a sense of acceptance. Okay, there are many people like me. I'm not alone. So I can, and even we and the instructors, the sections, everywhere, it is non-judgmental attitude. They learn also by modeling. There are other people who are coming from many days or many years who have learned some skills. These provide positive modeling. There's a caveat. I also need to say that people also develop negative modeling. Many people who are coming here from past, say, 20, 25 years, they learn from them also. Okay, if I come here regularly, I'll stick on to this system. There will be development of dependency on the system. They also think that, okay, some of the people, we have placed them in jobs. So they think that, okay, if I come regularly, if I am very punctual, probably they'll also get me a job. And so I need not work on any job. Let them provide job. This is a negative modeling which happens. They also develop friendships which help in informal social skills training. Although this person does not take any part in recreation and other activities, this is also one of the therapeutic elements. There is a sense of acceptance and achievement they have. And to achieve this, we had to put in some efforts to engage him in daycare. For example, individual attention. What we need to remember is the initial few days, like 1 month, is very important in engaging a person in a daycare center or in rehabilitation. Because we need to understand that rehabilitation is not like giving pills. You give it, they take it, it's over. Or it's not like a surgery. You do a surgery, it's over. There is a need for continuous care for rehabilitation, which we need to understand. For this, if we want a person to come to us continuously to develop a rapport, we need to, for developing a rapport, initial few days to a month is very essential. And there, when we provided individual attention to that person, talk to that person every day, and prompt readdressal of his concerns, when they have come for the first time to a daycare center, which is very new from their home environment, they would have a lot of concerns. Like, what if this person who was screaming hit me? This person actually screamed at me, actually came and hit me. What should I do? These kind of concerns were promptly readdressed, and some concerted efforts to make him comfortable were taken. And this happened due to collaborative decision making between the therapist, the tailoring section instructors, the family, and the multidisciplinary team. And we tried to engage him in home-based rehabilitation, which I will tell later. Contribution of tailoring instructors should not be forgotten. They are the most important persons in the rehabilitation of this person, because this individual spends, say, about in 7 hours of his presence in rehabilitation center, over 5 hours he spends with the tailoring instructors. They helped in establishing rapport by not being critical to him, understanding his individual strengths and also his limitations, and giving him personal touch, teaching him individually, taking care. Lack of pressure of performance helped in establishing rapport. They also taught him at the pace he was comfortable with. It took about 8 months for him to learn stitching in straight line. Some unique challenges which he posed were, we thought of incrementally increasing the difficulty of task. Like initially he was taught how to sew buttons, then stitching buttonholes, then stitching in straight line with 2 inches of gap, then with 1 inch gap, then stitching the edge. Then he was taught to stitch whole towels. Then he was asked to use electrically powered sewing machines. In this incremental order we went. From sewing buttons to whole towels, it had taken to stitching the edges, it had taken about 8 months. And from stitching the edge to using electrically powered machines, it had taken about another 18 months, 1.5 years for him to learn this task. And there was no pressure for him to perform. We were very patient. The tailoring instructors, they're here. I think we can call them here to tell their experience also. Sir.
Good evening.
Sir. With all these things, here we have our tailoring instructors, Mr. Baggy, who had taken personal interest in this individual and tried to teach him all these skills. Initially, when he started stitching the edges, we were very happy that we have he has learned a lot of skills. Now he can be placed outside. But with this, when we tried to place him outside, we thought this is the time when mother came up with the idea that there is a garments factory which are ready to take him. We thought that okay, we'll reassess his skills as to what is happening. When we tried to reassess, he had forgotten how to sew buttons. He could stitch in straight lines, but he had forgotten other skills. And when he had forgotten this, we revised our strategies. To overcome these challenges, we went with goal setting, over-learning, error-based learning, and testing. And we took a step back, and then we allowed him to learn new skills. What we initially did was, we taught him the skills again and again till he learned it, and then we had conducted a test for him every month end so that he could tell us what he has learned. It took about 18 months for the same. Contribution of neighbors the community should also be not forgotten. They helped in providing a sewing machine. The owner had a sewing machine which was lying idle. They gave it to him. They also provided orders of stitching pillow covers to him, which he had done promptly. Some of the efforts which we had taken in job placement were for self-employment. We thought he has a sewing machine now. He can do repair stitching at home with the help of mother. But the problem was when we wanted to teach mother has cataract and she did not have enough money to get the surgery done. And his reluctance also was a block at this point. We also thought of sheltered employment at an NGO called Yashaswini Swavlambana Trust. It's an NGO to stitch non-woven bags. The distance was too high. He had to travel about 6 hours every day to reach that place. So it was not a possibility. We thought of employing him in garments factory. So we thought of helping him in stitching in powered machine. Initially, he was very reluctant. He was afraid of stitching in powered machines. So that was not possible. In one of the boutiques, we thought of employing him, but there was a lot of stigma because of which the boutique did not come forward to take him. And at this point, when we thought we had hit a roadblock, a new initiative from NIMHANS came that we started 3 months training course with stipend, vocational training course. Currently, 4 sections of ours run this vocational training course. Now, this person has undergone this free 3 months of training course, which pays him around 1,000 rupees per month. Initially, he would get about 175 to 180 rupees as remuneration. Now, he gets about 1,000 rupees. Now, the challenges here are to discharge him, and he has developed this dependency on the system. The effects of vocational training course were he learned stitching in powered machine. We don't know why. Probably we think that there was increase in incentives, and there was prospective of getting a new certificate by which he could get a job. He can stitch various things if measurement is given. He can't take measurement and stitch and can be an independent tailor. Now we welcome discussion on the interventions which we have done.
MS Chellamuthu Trust wants to ask whether you made any home visit.
No, we have not done any home visits. But mother would come here frequently, visit us, say, once in every 15 days. So we did not do any home visits.
Would it have helped us further? What does the Challamuthu Trust have to say about it? Do you think a home visit would have helped us? Please. Yes, yes. Could you elaborate as to how a home visit could have done us some favors?
No, it is just a question we posed. Probably Dr. Satan with the team as a case management have made any home visit to ascertain the family condition and economic status, something like that.
It was almost like home was visiting us. So the mother was coming to the center, so we didn't feel the need. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Scarf wants to ask strategies adapted for controlling anger.
The reason for anger were two. One, his delusions, which were addressed by medications. Two, it was due to his frustration of not able to learn. So in our tailoring section, we had given him individual attention and we had given him enough time with the strategies which I had told. Like, for example, the establishing rapport and teaching him at his own pace. And through these strategies of goal setting, overlearning, errorless learning, and testing, because of which he felt that he was able to learn properly. In his own words, he told us that the previous employers would teach me and they would get frustrated as to why I am not able to learn, and I would get frustrated as to why I am not able to learn like others. But here it was not so. The environment is totally different. They allow me to experiment. They'll give me enough time to learn. That's the reason why I am not getting frustrated here. And because of this reason, he did not have any anger episodes at his home.
Dr. Ensil Thodi has suggested that some of the factors which might be responsible for good outcome were reduction of critical comment by parents and increased self-confidence by attainment of vocational skills and incentives in the form of money.
Yeah, we agree.
There is one question from MGM Medical College, Aurangabad. They want to seek your opinion about place and train model in our country, considering lack of support staff and competitive environment at workplaces.
Yeah, in our country, train and place is actually quite difficult because very few places are geared to train them, especially with an understanding about their disability, and then place. What happens mostly in community is place and train itself. So that happens. But what is lacking is some kind of a hand holding, some kind of supported employment that is a part and parcel of place and train model. So maybe I'll ask Sivakumar to elaborate on this. Would you like to say anything?
In our routine clinical practice, we find a lot of people who are doing well and have secured a job. In those cases, the family members would have helped them get placement and trained them on the job. Maybe there is a felt need in which we need to have a system through which helps the people understand their needs, sensitize the prospective employers, place them there and then train them. So there is a felt need for it. But I think most family members, without our help or active assistance from our part, are already doing this place and train.
Yeah, there are two important components of place and train. One is identification of a suitable job for the disabled person and getting a successful employment there. The second important part is about handling challenges when the person actually has secured a job. Some kind of support, which I think only professionals can do that. It may not be highly trained professionals. Even a bachelor level and master level people can be trained to support these people when they actually get a employment. That is particularly lacking in the country. Whereas the highly motivated families and patients somehow are able to place themselves, the disabled people in different vocations quite frequently.
What we also need to note is when we search for literature on these things, what we get is individual placement and support, which is a part of supported employment, but which is actually different from the normal supported employment which we provide. Individual placement and support needs a lot more rigorous work than supported employment. What probably we can provide is supported employment per se.
Supported employment as a concept means the person is placed in a regular work setting. So it is about reintegrating the person back to the community. Placing a person for a job in a sheltered workshop or in a specific protected environment may not be called supported employment. And as Chetan pointed out, for individual placement and support, there are fidelity scales. So one has to fulfill all those criteria and score more than 74. Only after that, the person would be allowed to call it as individual placement and support. Most of the literature on individual placement and support is from the West. From Asia, there is evidence from Hong Kong, but then Hong Kong is more developed than developing. So from the developing world, there is less evidence. I think there is a need to innovate and adopt place and train models as the default strategy for most eligible patients, but then for people who have difficulties, as has been pointed out in this particular slide, people who are less motivated, who are not symptomatically stable, who need specialized inputs, like in this case, he could not be taught by a regular tailor, even though that person was pretty sensitive to all his needs. So in those cases, train and place model can actually come.
So overall, in the most head-to-head comparisons or even otherwise indirect comparisons in the West have shown that place and train model is far superior in terms of successful, gainful, competitive employment than train and place. But there are always individuals who will require train and place. For them also we should have facilities to train and place.
Both these models need to coexist.
Now we'll go ahead with the presentation. Now this is a recovery model, the steps of recovery as told by Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the United States of America. There are many, the hope, recovery, for recovery we should all know that we should induce hope, and the recovery is always person driven. There are many pathways for recovery. There should be a holistic approach. There should be peer support. It should be relational. It should be culture sensitive. We have to address the trauma. There are strengths and responsibility of the community and individual to get recovered, and we have to respect. Some of the key ingredients we felt were the continuity of care. Like there was a single therapist from the time he had come here. There was a multidisciplinary team approach, and there was supportive administration in terms of having a vocational training, having these sections, and having many the team which consists of many people who are skilled. Some of the strengths which this individual, family and society had were, he was punctual, he would be calm even though people at times would get angry on him, people would shout at him. There were instances when other patients had hit him. He would be calm and he would come and complain to us. He was motivated to work. His adherence to treatment also was very high. And his mother was very resourceful. She would never complain, but she would try to find solutions for all the challenges she would face. She wouldn't hesitate to talk to others, and she felt no stigma in talking to others. And all the time she would be supportive. And society also helped him, the neighbors helped him. The daycare center, some of the things which helped him were developing friendships, providing a work habit, sense of acceptance and achievement, and respect for caregivers. What are the probably prerequisites for successful rehabilitation? We felt that the family and community support is the integral part of prerequisites for successful rehabilitation. The training centers like this, although place and train model is should be default, community rehabilitation should be default, there is a need also for training centers in this area, and employment opportunities should also be present. If we train for placement, there should be employment opportunities. If we train, we have to place them somewhere. for that employment opportunities should be available. And it should be a welfare state. It should be a right-based state rather than a charity-based model, which will go a long way in helping persons get recovered and successfully rehabilitated. The key messages what we think should be taken home are the importance of coordination between the patient, family, community, and the institution, and need for institution-based training program, need for strengths approach in rehabilitation planning, welfare benefits as a rehabilitation tool, need for continuity of care, need for persistence, innovation, and flexibility. Dependency on the system is a challenge, and there are challenges in placement too. Thank you, and I call upon the discussion for road ahead on placement and further training strategies.
They can unmute it.
Yeah, you can unmute and
Give us.
yeah, give your suggestions, ask questions. Yeah, this case we presented not as something extraordinary that we have done. It's a routine case, an average case that we would have handled at any point of time. We wanted to highlight a lot of things that we thought institution-based rehabilitation offers, and I mean the challenges are different in community-based rehabilitation. Challenges are different in home-based rehabilitation. It will be different in homeless, mentally ill, etc. We will discuss about these things in future. But in this presentation, we wanted to highlight the advantages and disadvantages of institution-based rehabilitation.
This is Swaminath here.
Yes, sir. Nice to see you, sir.
I came a little late and I had a lot of problem getting into the system, but I thoroughly enjoyed this presentation. What is more important is, this is though this is the first one, it's basically a reiteration that non-pharmacological therapies have a main role, probably equal role in making the patient functional. We have always concentrated on pharmacological therapies, and the non-pharmacological therapies also have a main role. What is important in today's presentation is that each component, there has been an operationalization of how the outcome has been achieved. And that has been actually a real training for a lot of us who actually don't work in institutions, but we should be able to put across this message to our patients when they come on an outpatient basis. I really enjoyed this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will also look forward to more active participation from you and your colleagues in the future.
Oh, thank you, yes.
Scarf wants to ask, how did you manage dependency in this class?
We have not yet managed. That's a challenge still we are facing.
Yeah.
Some suggestions.
There is a smile on Scarf people face. Do you want to share something? You would have had similar challenges of getting away from the dependency.
And possibly how they handle
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, we also like frequently face this as a challenge in our setting. But see, slowly we have a lot of employers who are willing to employ our rehabilitated clients. So slowly we tell them that this will be a similar setup, a sheltered kind of a workshop. You can place, you can work there. The employers know the details about the patient's illness, so they understand that the pace which they will work. So we will have a session with the employer before placing the client, and we will educate them on what are the symptoms, how do they work, what is their way of working and everything. So once we place them there with the employer, slowly they will also understand that their employers are not very critical. They understand the problems, and we also have constant touch with the employers. They call us every 15 days or every month and give us a report about the client, and they give the client the permission to take rest, like how we in our vocational training center give them a break after 2 hours of work. They take a break, they have a tea time, or they have some recreation time. Like that, slowly when they start with the work, the employers also start giving them some break. They don't continuously pressurize them to work. So for certain clients, we are able to do this, and they are able to exit from our center.
And also home-based employment, where the family members will be trained on few home-based employment things like making phenol or something. So the family members take the lead role and they start supporting the client at home.
Yeah,
but the actual challenges like clients who are like well qualified, we have difficulty in placing them outside also. We are not able to find a suitable employer to employ them. So these kind of clients, we have problem in placing them in jobs, and also in rehabilitating them.
We invite SCARF to come up with one successful and one not so successful case. We would encourage you to present in one of our future discussions here.
Yeah, definitely, Doctor. We will plan one and we will present. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have cases like that. We will do that.
The entire philosophy of this exercise is learning from each other, and we want to actually learn from all the centers about your own challenges and innovative methods with which you have worked with people. It is not that it's a didactic session and it's one-way learning. As Prabhat was pointing it out, it's a group learning. We would invite all centers to come forward and propose to present some cases or some topics also. Please get in touch with us. We will look forward to presentations from your side also.
Probably, as I said, it's a challenge still now. What we plan in future is there was a garments factory which mother had seen, which had said that they'll employ him after seeing his skills. At that point of time, he was not skilled in sewing, tailoring in powered machine. Now that he is skilled in powered machine, we thought of liaising with the garments factory and see whether he can be placed there. The other plans we have are we have some things like tambula bag which they can stitch at home. We thought of teaching him these tambula bags which he can stitch at home, pillow covers which he can stitch at home, and then he can sell it by the help of his mother. These are some of the ideas which we have. We are also developing a database of persons who can be employed, persons who can employ them, have vocational profiling of them, and helping them in getting jobs. Only Dr. Aarti can elaborate on the same.
We've just started an initiative because we found a huge felt need between people who have recovered and who need to get rehabilitated, especially since vocation is a very important part of rehabilitation. And also prospective employers who could employ them, because we need to start networking with the society. So as of now, we've just started a database of patients. We're having a basic vocational assessment, started having a database of people who we believe are rehab ready and who are employable, found out what skills they are good at. And also we've started networking with various organizations and with institutes where we could prospectively partner with them, and they could take on some of the patients and make their database. So currently we are just started off with the database and we hope that it will pick up and we would be able to have some success stories in some time.
If there are no more questions, I would like to end this session, but I will hand over the mic to Sivakumar, who will announce the next two sessions that we have.
Before that, I want to thank NIMHANS Center for De-Addiction Medicine, Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services, and ECHO for giving me the opportunity to present this case. Thank you all.
This was supposed to be a platform for sharing our knowledge and clinical wisdom and learn from best practices of others. So in the first series which we have put up, the next session will be in the 4th Friday of July. So the next session we will be having a case presentation by MS Chelamuthu Trust Madurai. This will be on a person of community-based rehabilitation using government resources. So the profile of the client is going to be different from what was we presented today. So it is a person who is in the community. How was this person identified? How was this person treated, rehabilitated using the government resources? While in the month of August, we will be having another profile of patient who is homeless mentally ill. What were the challenges in getting this person from the streets? How to get him to treatment? How to trace the address of the family and then rehabilitate them? So the process of rehabilitation is going to be different in the subsequent 2 months. And during the next schedule of the program, we would invite all the participants to come up with cases. We would love to hear from you and also learn from your experiences. And your feedback regarding future sessions would be welcome. It would be helpful in taking this initiative forward.
Please spread the word around. We want more participation from other parts of the country also.
Can we have hello?
Yes, you are heard.
Yeah. Can we have all these presentation PPT through mail?
Yeah, we can share them.
Yes.
Yeah. We have your contacts. We will.
Yes. And Dr. Sivakumar and team, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it was really wonderful, thought-provoking session we had. And we all really enjoyed this technological aspects of this presentation. And I hope we'll meet you on 24th of July of CBR. Thank you. One and all. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you. You can close.
Wow.